From the headquarters of the Guild of Champions, this is the Becoming Thin podcast. And I am your host, Chris Terrell. And welcome to another week of your weight loss quest. How did this last week go for you, champion? What new challenges did you encounter? But more importantly, what failure did you go through? And what lesson did you get from that failure? Come on now. Don't let a perfectly good failure go by without you getting your lesson. That's your reward for your troubles, after all. Now, if you're new here, I've lost 125 pounds myself after an entire adulthood of chronic yo-yo dieting. Up, down, up again. Before I finally got sick and tired of being sick and tired and fat, and I made some permanent, meaningful, and actual changes to my real-life lifestyle, habits, routines, environment, community, and to my systems of belief. Because it's all 6 of those things that created the results in my life, and if I wanted to get new results, I was going to have to go change those same 6 things. And now I'm here each week to help people like you get the same results in your life. You know, the results of losing weight forever, permanently. I know you. You're not one to take a vacation to Thinville. You got there, you looked around, you pulled up Zillow, you looked at the prices of the homes, and you're like, I think I want to move here. I think I want to live in Thinville forever. And that's what I'm here to help you do. Book a one-way trip ticket, not a round-trip ticket with a vacation. I want you to live here all the time. And that's why we changed those 6 things. Because I want you to get the weight loss that lasts, the permanent kind of weight loss. I was in a group earlier this week with new members of the Guild, and I posed a question of like, hey, would you feel successful if you lost all the weight and gained it back several years later? If so, raise your hand. Not a single hand went up. Because we all want the same thing, right? You don't want to lose weight temporarily. You want to lose weight permanently. You want it to be gone. You want it to be out of your life. Just like I did. I did the yo-yo dieting thing. That's a really annoying roller coaster to be on. And this podcast is here to help you get the results like that in your life. Now, before we dive into everything today, as you've noticed, if you've been listening, we've been changing up the format of the episodes. We're doing more segments. I'm going to have a mix of monologues, a mix of questions. I've got a few other segment types I'm working on to do in the future. This is adding a bit of some more hurdles for me with producing everything, but I really want to elevate the show, want to keep it new, want to keep it exciting, both for me as the one doing it, I've been doing this for years, and also for you as the listener. You know, we've got a lot of episodes in the past, right, that you can go listen to, but it's time to evolve forward, because that's how life works best, is when you're always evolving forward in the way that seems true and authentic to you. And this just seems like the true and authentic path for me to take the podcast. So today we have a lot of questions centered around hunger. And I thought before I dive into this, we would talk about a concept that I teach a lot of my clients and a lot of people in my programs, which is looking at our habits. You know, say in the beginning of every episode, we're a byproduct of our lifestyle habits and routines, right? Habits is such a big thing. In fact, I have a type of an approach to weight loss. I call it habit-based weight loss, where you lose weight by way of changing your baseline habits, not putting into place new habits. I worry sometimes that people think, oh, so I should make calorie tracking a habit and that'll keep me thin forever. No. I don't want you tracking your calories forever. Yes, I want you to track your calories for a season or 2. I want you to be aware of it. I want you to pick up caloric awareness. But the end outcome is not to track your calories forever. And I know many of you've met people that are like, yeah, the only way I stay thin is I have to track my calories forever. And I always got to be mindful and hyper control everything. That's a person that hasn't learned how to maintain, right? And that's why I teach maintenance as well. I no longer just teach weight loss. I also teach people how to maintain. And in maintenance, I don't want you tracking your calories forever, because that ain't the life of my dreams. And I can't imagine it's the life of your dreams either. What we want to do is adopt new habits that you'll keep on the other side. In other words, adopt the habits of thin people and abandon the habits of big people, right? And think of a habit, if you could, think of it like a dirt road that's worn a rut in it. Your mind has these neural pathways, and they sort of form like these ruts, this preferred way of going. And the interesting thing about a rut is, at first, it's actually pretty shallow and easy to steer out of, right? When a habit is new, yes, you can kind of feel it as the grooves are being worked in, but it's easy to get out of them. That's what a lot of your new weight loss habits, your new life habits are. They're right. There's these super gentle ruts in the road, barely even noticeable at first. And because of that, they don't really keep you stuck. But the more you drive on that path, reinforcing that new habit again and again and again and again, pairing repetition with time, because time is not our enemy, it's our ally, the deeper the rut gets. Eventually, you don't have to steer at all. You can get in a rut, and a rut will guide the vehicle. And that is what many people are experiencing in their life. They're not choosing, they're just letting their mind stay in the groove. But just as you create new habits, and we want to form these ruts in our mind, you have to remember, you already have ruts in your mind. You already have these grooves of these old habits worn in, and they will keep you stuck if you're not careful. You see, weight gain does not come from one decision. It does not come from one thing. It is not, oh, I like carbs. It is not because you have a failure to track your calories. Weight gain comes from thousands of automatic decisions made when you're in a rut. Not like a rut like you're stuck. I'm talking a rut like a groove in the road. The only way out is to interrupt that pattern. You have to get out of the rut. And at first, if it's a deep rut, that could be very, very challenging to do. And so know that this is a thing in the mind. Give yourself a lot of grace. Give yourself a lot of leeway as you're seeking to change your habits, because you'll get stuck. But also, every time you drive in the old rut, you make it deeper. You make it more ingrained. In other words, every time you execute the old habit, you get another rep in and you make it harder to get out of it. In many ways, the better thing is not so much to do the right different thing than the old patterns. In fact, it's actually to do anything different than the old pattern. The whole point is to avoid doing the old patterns. So when you're feeling frustrated on your journey, you might be thinking you're broken. Don't think in terms of that you're broken. Rather, think of it as like you're just stuck in a rut and you need to get out of that rut. You don't need more willpower. You need a new groove to get stuck into. And it is repetition paired with time that will create the ruts. And if you do it with intentionality, they can be the ones you want. Many people think these ruts in our mind are a bug. They're not a bug, they're a feature. It makes life a lot easier to deal with. So, all right, now we're going to go ahead and start transitioning to some questions. So we'll be back in just a moment to take a couple of listener questions. So, see you shortly. Welcome back to the Becoming Thin podcast. Today, all questions come from the Becoming Thin Facebook group. You can join that Facebook group by searching for Becoming Thin on Facebook. It'll probably be the only group that pops up. Or you can head on over to becomingthin.com and click on resources, put your questions there, and you might be able to get it answered here on the show. Now, our first listener question this week comes from Melissa. Melissa says, how do I learn to slow down in the moment and really tune into my hunger? Make choices that align with my goals and stay present in social situations with myself. Often I get swept up in the moment of having fun, laughing, talking, and stuffing my face hole before I realize what I'm doing. I had an actual food hangover last Sunday because I ate enough for a small family, and it felt like the night before at a friend's party. Yep. This is great. We have hunger paired with what do we do when we're in these social situations? It's constantly pulling our mind out of the moment. So here's the thing. Let's get clarity on what battle we're fighting here. You are not at a war with food. That's not the battle. It seems like that's the battle, but that's not the battle. You're actually doing battle with your own autopilot. Remember what I said about those ruts earlier? You're doing war with your automatic thinking. You see, when you act from a place of unconsciousness, you are actually allowing your past to decide what you do in the moment. When you are unconscious, you are living in what is referred to as habit energy. Your habit is dictating what you do. But when you decide to act consciously, your future might be playing a bit more of a role in that and what happens. And so one of the things that I have found really helps with this is to So first, this is a totally human experience that you're going through. This is completely natural because social eating pulls us into the moment, so to speak. But if you're so caught up in what's happening outside of you, that moment could actually rob you of presence. We want to be present with our mind. Here's the truth. If you wait until you're in the chaos of something like a party or going out to eat with friends or in a stressful situation, if you wait until you're in that chaos to then decide what you're going to do for your choices, and you're on a weight loss journey and you're trying to become thin, you've already lost. You are probably going to lose. The reality is many people, they worry, they don't know what's going to happen, they worry, and so they just don't like the worrying, so they stop worrying. And then they get in the moment, but they get in the moment and they get in the moment from a place of automatic thinking, autopilot. They're not staying conscious. A way I like to think of this is I used to go out and eat all the time, right? And when I would try to lose weight, I would wait until I got to the restaurant to then decide what I'd want to eat. Now that I'm surrounded by the food, I'm surrounded by the smells, the sights of all the plates of what people are getting, everybody at the table, what are you going to order? I'm looking at the menu with all the enticing pictures and the wonderful descriptions. That is a hard moment to be, for the first time, deciding what it is you're going to eat. So let's talk about this from a restaurant standpoint, just as a tip. What I discovered helped me on my journey is if I knew I was going to go out to eat, I would look up the restaurant menu ahead of time and I would decide what I was going to get before I even got to the restaurant. Because I found if I already showed up with a plan, that made it easier. Now, you cannot always do this, okay? That's not what I'm saying you always can do, but this is an example where you could look ahead and prepare what you're going to do. But I know when you're going to like a party, that could be more tricky because you have like a lot of finger foods. And as you said, people are getting caught up in it. Like, oh, did you try the homemade Oreos? Did you try that piece of cake? Did you get the cheese dip over there? That is incredible. And you're like, oh, chips and cheese dip. Yeah, I think I might want to try that. It's a war zone when you're on a weight loss journey. So the first thing you need to do is when you're going into a party like that is to pause. You need to pause and think about, what is your objective? What do you want to experience? When you leave this party, what do you want to reflect back and say you did, right? You have to fully own it. And then you go to the party. But you have to first set your intention. Become present and mindful and aware of your goals and your desired outcomes before you walk through the door. At first, this might be a bit of a bear to get yourself to do it, but you'll notice after doing it a bunch, it'll become sort of automatic. It'll only take you a few seconds to just sort of get your intention set, and then you move forward into the party. But now when you're at the party, this is where it's important to practice not getting swept up in the moment, to allow yourself to slow down. This is, again, where the pause comes in. When someone offers food, don't jump on it just because someone offered. Say, oh, wow, that sounds really good. Yeah, I might go get some in a minute. Pause, and then just sit in your mind, wait for the initial, oh, gotta go get it. Wait for that to simmer down a little bit, and then check in with yourself and ask, do I really want to get this? Is this really what I want? Just ask yourself from a place of calmness. Don't get swept up in the moment. I'm not saying don't take food because somebody offers it. I'm just saying when you're at a party, that's a war zone. You're going to be constantly having food around you, thrown at you, or tempting you in front of you. Don't give in to a momentary temptation. Always pause. Wait for the immediate temptation to subside. One of the ways I trained myself on this, and it really helped, is I would go to bakeries in grocery stores, and I would walk to where, that part, you get kind of close to the cake part, and you can smell the frosting in the air. You can smell the sugary goodness. And I would just walk into it because I noticed when I'm under the spell of a good smell, there's this sensation that courses through my body that's like, oh, I want to have that. And so I would just walk into the middle of the bakery section where I make sure I could smell the food, and I would just go as deep as I could. I would smell it in until I couldn't take in another bit of air, and then I would just be like, gosh, this smells so good. I would just let myself admit that it smells good, and I would sense and notice all the feelings in my body rising up within me, craving and desiring to have something from this section. And then I would walk away and go about my shopping. I did this to desensitize myself, but also to practice feeling the biological urge to go for recreational food that is not necessary, not needed, and then saying no. I needed to have that experience. That was really important, because then when you're at a party and you see all these foods around you and you have all these smells and you're feeling the temptation coursing through your body, that won't be the first time you've tried that. Think of it like playing the Super Bowl, right? You would never play football for the first time at the Super Bowl. You would practice. And you would practice a bunch so that you're ready for game time. So I want you to think of a party as game time. This is when you got to be on your best. You got to see what you can do. This is when we're going to find out what you're made of. We're going to see if you've really trained, if you're really ready for this. And you're going to go in, you're going to find your strengths, and you're going to go double down on those, and you're going to walk out and you're going to find your weaknesses, and you're going to know where you got to go do the work and level up. And this sniff training is an example of where you're conditioning yourself to not give in to temptation. Many of you are completely conditioned to giving into temptation when it shows up with food is around, right? If food is around and you feel the urge to eat it, the temptation rises to a certain tipping point, you cave. I want you to practice hitting that tipping point and not caving. It's not to say that you'll never cave. I don't want it to be that way. What I want it to be is if you cave, it is done with a place of intentionality. You picked what it is you want to do, right? If you can master these triggers, you will master your weight. And that's really what this boils down to. Mastering your triggers so that you can then go on to master your weight. So go find a way to get triggered in a controlled environment and then don't give in. That will help you win on your Becoming Thin journey. All right. Great question, Melissa. Thanks for asking it. This is the Becoming Thin podcast. And if this resonated with you and you're curious about your hunger, you can grab my free hunger guide over at becomingthin.com. It's designed for moments exactly like we described here. This is the Becoming Thin podcast. See you in a moment. I really love that saxophone. I love this saxophone. Welcome back to the Becoming Thin podcast. Our next question today comes to us from Brittany. Brittany says, how do you find, wrong question, right here. I do well with intuitive eating throughout the day, but I find myself craving snacks in the evening out of habit or emotional reasons rather than hunger. What strategies or mindset shifts can help me break out of that cycle and crave healthier eating habits? So first I want to talk about the word healthier evening habits. I really, really dislike the use of the word healthy with weight loss. I'll hear people say things like, well, I came home and I made the healthier choice. Well, I went out to eat and I picked all nothing but healthy foods. I loaded my fridge up with healthy. I need to have healthy habits. I actually think this mindset contributes to the obesity thing because it causes us to not admit what it is we truly want. If you first come join the guild, you're going to get about a 15-minute monologue and discussion where I talk you through thin. This is the Becoming Thin podcast. And I posed the question literally just this week to my new members and said, people don't say they want to be thin. What do they actually say they want to do? Tell me in the chat. And just blah, blah, blah. Everybody's like, healthy, health. I'm going for my health. So many people are afraid to say, I just want to be thin. I just want to do something that results in me losing weight. And there's all sorts of stigma that goes with it. And I don't know if that's what you mean, but I just wanted to call out the healthiness. Don't think in terms of healthier evening habits. I don't even know what that means. Because in some cases, a healthy eating habit a healthy evening habit might mean coming home, sitting on the couch and unwinding. Another time, same person, different day, a healthy evening habit might be to go out and go for a walk. And another time it might mean to go talk to a friend. Another time it might mean to go and do some grocery shopping or do some journaling. I would rather think in terms of helpful. What are the habits you could adopt that take you towards your goal? That's what we're wanting to do. So now with that out of the way, I want you to give yourself credit, Brittany, for recognizing the pattern. You recognize the pattern of craving snacks in the evening out of habits and emotional reasons rather than hunger, because awareness to the pattern is step one. Without awareness to a problem, why would you take any effort to solve it? So this is excellent that you're noticing it. So let's talk a little bit about this pattern, though. You do well during the day, so to speak, and then in the evenings, sort of the emotional eating, the habit eating, all this begins to come into play, right? This is classic executive function depletion. I mean, think about it. Throughout your day, you make hundreds potentially of decisions. Yes, no, do this, don't do that, do this, do that. Do I do this? Do I do this first? Do I do that second? Do I skip this? Do I go over here and drive this way? Do I turn left at the traffic light or do I go straight? I mean, all throughout the day, your brain is just making all these teeny tiny decisions, and no one of them is particularly difficult or taxing on your mind. But understand that every time you make a decision, you burn a little bit of calories, and it zaps a little energy from you. Your brain gets tired like a muscle. And so this is the executive function we're referring to. And so it's just being eroded and degraded throughout the day. And then you get to the end of the day and now your brain is tired and it wants relief. Your brain doesn't want to keep using its logic. It just wants a relief. It wants a break from all that. So here's the tip for you. Don't leave mission critical decisions in the hands of your most tired version of yourself. Far too often on our weight loss journey, we are leaving mission critical decisions, as in, you're going to take in 500 calories in the evening in snacks. You've already planned it and there's nothing wrong with it. I do it all the time. But there's no plan. You're just showing up to the evening and just YOLOing it. That is not a recipe for success. Believe me. I tried. I tried for a long time to see if I could make that work. It never really worked. You see, in the evening, your job isn't to make perfect choices. Rather, your job is to follow pre-made choices. You see, the key to getting through the evening is to pre-decide your evening plan. Pre-decide what it is you're going to do. Now, you don't have to make it rigid. You could. It could just be a loose plan. It could be like 500 calories. That's it. But that's only if you're of a good headspace to like kind of piecemeal your calories. Let's say after 2 or 3 nights, you keep blowing past your 500 calories. Well, you've already demonstrated you are not someone, you at this moment in time cannot be trusted with just a 500 calorie guideline. You need more guidelines. You need a more detailed plan. And so you might need to say, okay, I'm going to do 500 calories, but I'm going to do these 3 snacks. I've computed it. These 3 snacks will equal up to 500 calories. And these are the only 3 I get. I can have them whenever I want. And if I violate that, then we might have to add even more structure. You see, we want to build winding down routines. We want to find things that keep you occupied, to keep you doing things. Sometimes what happens in the evening is we're just tired and so we get bored. And because we're bored and our executive function's down, we're just sort of choosing what is the easiest choice available to us at our disposal. I also found that it's difficult to just resist nighttime craving. I like my evening snacks. I remember in the beginning of my journey, I was reflecting back on all the restrictions I would always do. And one of the things I would do is I would try to restrict myself in the evening a lot, saying, you can't eat after 7 o'clock, otherwise you're going to get fat. Anything you eat after 7 turns to fat, which is total bullshit. That's not real at all. You can eat at 9 o'clock at night. Your digestion still works just fine. But I just kind of thought about that. I'm like, you know what? I want to learn how to lose weight without giving up my evening snacks. I realized eventually I need to have some boundaries around them, but I didn't have to get rid of them. And so I just accommodated myself. I made a plan that allowed me to snack in the evening. One of the things I did is I robbed breakfast calories and I threw them to the evening. You see, when I'm in maintenance, yeah, I can eat breakfast and have evening snacks. But when I'm losing weight, I need to create a deficit. So some food has got to go. I have to undereat a little bit. I personally found I preferred to give up breakfast calories so that I could have my evening calories. Well, I know some people, they'd rather give up their evening calories. There's not one single right answer for everybody universally, but there could be a right answer for you today. And what works for you today might not work for you 6 months from now. So what I think will help in this case, Brittany, is to create and pre-decide a wind down strategy. What is something you can do, like a plan that you could stick to? Because willpower is a terrible strategy for tired brains. I mean, just absolutely terrible. And especially if you have this emotional hunger at the same time, now you have no willpower, and this emotional hunger is creating this deep inner sense of urgency. And if it's emotional hunger, it's actually not even about the food. It's probably about soothing. It's probably about creating an experience or feeling an emotion or being distracted, right? You have your preferred foods to do that. But if it's emotional eating, remember, you're not choosing a food, you're choosing a feeling. And So we've got to make sure you're showing up to that environment ready. And that's by predetermining what your plan will be, thinking about it throughout the day. Anyway, great question. This is the Becoming Thin podcast. And we're going to be back in a moment. We're going to talk a little bit more about this mindless eating. Welcome back to the Becoming Thin podcast. This question comes to us from Joseph. Again, in the Becoming Thin Facebook group, which you can find a link to by going to becomingthin.com. So Joseph asks, how do you find those emotional eating triggers you somehow seem blind when entering into? For instance, on more than one occasion, I have been in my chair and realized there was a snack in my hand, and I genuinely don't remember getting it. So let's go back to what I was saying in the beginning of the episode. Remember about the ruts in the mind. You have these ruts in the mind where you get stuck. This is an example of them. An assignment I like to give people when I'm first beginning to work with them is I'll say, hey, for 1 week, every time you eat, before the food crosses your lips, you're holding the food in your hand, before you take your first bite, you say, why am I eating this? You just ask yourself, why am I eating this? And just do it every time. You can eat the food. I'm not going to tell you to eat it. I'm not going to tell you not to eat it. I'm just going to say for 1 single week, every time you eat, say, why am I eating this? And then you can eat it or not eat it. I don't really care. Because what I'm wanting to do is to help break the person out of their rut. You see, this question that Joseph asked is such a relatable question for so many people. So many people, because I have had so many people come back on after giving that assignment and they're debriefing me. And I'm like, well, how'd it go? They're like, man, there were 3 times yesterday. I was standing there with the cabinet doors open, looking at food. And I'm like, why am I here? I don't even know why I have this open. I'm not hungry at all. And I'm here looking in the cabinet, looking for food. I'm like, how many times have I been doing this? That's because awareness is finally being created to the habits that the person has been living, that we think we're choosing, but we're not. It just happens. We think we're hungry, but we're not. It's just eating on a routine that we've done again and again and again and again. It's like, oh, I'm going to watch TV. Oh, well, I always get hungry at some point during the show, so I should go ahead and get snacks now because I don't want to get up in the middle of the show and go get a snack. So let's go ahead and get a snack now so I'll have it at the ready. And then, of course, you've got the snack. The episode begins. You eat the snack. You're like, well, I'd like a little more of a snack. So you pause the show and go get another snack. It's like, wait a minute. What if you just skipped the first snack, waited till you wanted one, paused the show and went and got it? You'd have one less snack and you still would have got it because you chose to do it, right? You see, emotional eating, which keep in mind, mindless eating is a benign, kind of more innocent form of emotional eating. But for somebody that struggles with emotional eating and obesity, mindless eating is a problem. But emotional eating does not go, hey, I'm coming in for now. It doesn't introduce itself. Emotional eating just quietly slips in when you're not paying attention and it takes the wheel. And you don't notice until it's already driving, metaphorically speaking. So the way to get through this, how do you find and overcome these triggers? The work actually comes down to pattern spotting. You don't focus on what you're eating. The what is more irrelevant when you're beginning to do this. Rather, trace the chain of events that are leading up to the moment to choose to eat. Backpedal. You see, what you've got, Joseph, is retroactive awareness. You're becoming aware of a problematic behavior, but you tend to become aware far into the chain of dominoes being hit, right? Yeah, you can put your hand and stop the chain of dominoes, but a whole lot of them have already toppled. Whereas the earlier in the chain of events that you can intervene, the better. So think of it's like trying to stop a train, right? Once the train is up to full speed, it's going to take a long time to slow down. There's so much momentum and inertia built up. But if the train hasn't really got up to speed, it can stop a lot sooner. And that's what's really happening with this emotional eating pattern that you're going through. Let me give you another metaphor. Imagine you're walking through a field or maybe a trail in the woods. How about that? You walk through this trail in the woods. You've never walked this trail before. It's the first time you've ever hiked it. You've decided you're going to get some steps, and you trip over a root. You're like, God damn it. Wow, that root's totally sticking up. Okay. And then you keep going, and then you come back another time. You take a different trail. You don't think about it. Then you come back through that trail again a week later, and you trip over the same root, the exact same one. You're like, damn it, I tripped over that root last time. I totally forgot about that. And then you go about, you're going all these different trails. A week or two later, you're back on the same trail, and you trip over the root, and you're like, dang it, I did it again. I got to remember that root is there every time I come on this trail, because I've tripped on it every time. And then you come back some week or two later to the same trail, and you're coming up to the point, and just at the last seconds, you look down and you see the root, and you're like, oh, right, there's a root there. And then you consciously choose to step over it, right? It was very much a conscious choice. You did not, it wasn't automatic. You just happened to notice because something within your mind is like, hey, pay attention. Right, root. I always trip over that root. Then a few weeks go by, you come back to the trail, you're getting closer to it, you're like, oh, wait. No, that root's coming up again that I keep tripping on. Where is it? Ah, there it is. And then you step over it. And then you go on the trail again. And then eventually you don't even notice. You're just subconsciously recognizing this is where the root is on the path. And you just, without any effort, you just walk over it. You step over it and you don't even notice it. And you kind of begin to forget about the root altogether. This is how emotional eating works. You don't beat it by brute force. You just learn to see it sooner consciously by recognizing the pattern, like, damn it, I tripped over that root again. I got to remember this. Damn it, I tripped over the root. I got to remember this. And then you're like, oh, wait, no, I'm about to do it again. Last 3 nights in a row, I've come home, I've opened this cabinet, got this food, and this just started a whole chain of events. Let's not do it this time, right? And you catch it. And eventually you get to the place where it's just automatic. You see, there's a part of us that wants the comfort more than the outcome. And habit is very, very comfortable, very comfortable. And so you've got to have a reason to want to break free from that habit. And this comes from awareness, from just being mindful of what's happening, looking at the pattern, and then tracing the steps backwards, finding what happened before. So you said here in your question, let me come back to it. I've been in my chair and realized there was a snack in my hand I don't remember getting. In that moment, trace it back in your head. Next time that happens, I go, what was I doing right before this? Like, what was I thinking? What was I feeling right before I sat down? Okay, there it was. What was I thinking and feeling and doing right before that? Okay, I remember that. What was I thinking and doing and feeling right before that? I don't really remember. That's a bit of a gray area for me. Maybe I was thinking this. Now you know. Next time you're going through the pattern, try to remember and notice what that missing part is. And I've discovered this on my journey. If I just kept backpedaling, backtracking, and reverse engineering what I was doing, it was making it easy. But here's the problem. What you're describing here is all could be emotionally driven eating that goes beyond boredom eating. The beauty of boredom eating is it's easy to overcome by just not being bored, right? If you're not bored, you won't boredom eat. Right? But some of the more stress-induced emotional eating, which is more of a coping mechanism, that's a bit trickier. You see, as I said earlier, there's a part of us that wants comfort more than we want the outcome. So in the short term, the mind wants the comfort of the emotional eating. It wants the pleasure of executing on a pattern. But unless we understand why we're doing it and work on it, we're going to keep unconsciously choosing the known discomfort of regret over the familiar tension of restraint. So start looking for the footprints, the telltale signs that emotional eating was showing up in your life, and try to trace those footprints back. See where they began. What you do after the mistake matters as much as what you do before, because what you're doing here is you're creating awareness retroactively to the pattern. That is good. That is important. And so just keep doing it. You're right on the right path. You're doing exactly what you need to do. You just start slowly working yourself further and further backwards in the chain. Excellent question. Thank you so much for asking that. And if this kind of detective work you find interesting, everybody, this is the exact sort of stuff we work on inside the Guild, which is my weight loss community. If you want to learn more about the Guild, you can head on over to theguildofchampions.com. All right, we'll take our last question here in a moment. All right, welcome back to the Becoming Thin podcast. And our last question today, not the last segment, I got a segment coming after it, comes from Sabrina, again, from the Becoming Thin Facebook group. Sabrina asks, how do you overcome weight loss burnout? It's really hard to see great progress. Try and take a day or two break to recharge, no tracking, no meal planning, but also not eating anything and everything, and then get discouraged and see the scale go up 2 to 3 pounds. I struggle to get back in the groove. Groove pie, that's fun. Sometimes it takes me 1 full week to get back where I left off, but I get too burned out if I don't take off days. So if you need to take off days, you're doing too much on your on days. That's what that means. You need to do less. You're doing too much. You're burning yourself out. What you're describing, like, how do you overcome weight loss burnout? Well, you do it by doing less. I know the temptation, like, well, no, that's not good enough. I should work hard. So many of us get conditioned, I don't know where, I did it too, to think like we have to suffer. We got to really work hard to get our reward. We think that weight loss is supposed to be miserable. So just when you're feeling that burnout feeling, that's not a sign that you need to take a break. It's a sign you need to readjust your strategy and make it maybe a little smarter, more intentional. Find a way to make it easier. You probably have too much friction going on in this strategy that you're employing. And you need to, rather than going, oh, I need to take a break, go, how can I reduce the friction? How can I make what I'm doing easier to do? I think that's really important, is make your strategy more doable. That way you don't need to take a break at all. But I actually want to talk about a part of your question that I think is more important. Because it seemed like you were talking about taking a break and getting in the groove. But there's this line, I get discouraged when I see the scale go up 2 to 3 pounds. And you're talking about just a 2 or 3 day break. We need to talk about that. Because you're approaching that with the diet mentality. And you're approaching it chasing day-to-day movements in the scale. You're trying to control it every single day. You see, a 2 to 3 pound jump on the scale from one day to the next doesn't mean anything. I mean, it could be from water weight. It could be from too much salt. It could be just, you've got a bunch of food in you and digestion hasn't pushed it through. You could have inflammation. I mean, if you went up 2 or 3 pounds, unless you just absolutely went to town, it's not fat. To gain body fat, a pound of body fat, you need to consume somewhere in the vicinity of 3,500 calories above your maintenance calories. So let's say you're a 350 pound, 5'7" female. Did you know you would need to consume 3,000 calories a day plus just to maintain your weight? Just to maintain it. So that means if you were to gain 2 pounds in a day of body fat, you would need to consume in that day, 9,000 calories? I mean, you're going to notice you did that. You're going to be aware. If you gain 2 or 3 pounds from one day to the next, it's not fat. And this is where you've got to update the knowledge in your mind to go, okay, this is not body fat. And I know the fear is going to talk and like, oh no, this is a trend in the wrong direction. But one day to the next, that's not a trend. Even 1 week isn't a good trend. I teach people 3 weeks. 3 weeks of scale data will tell you what the trend is. That's so important to focus on that, not focusing on the individual subtle movements from one day to the next. You see, it would be like trying to determine the direction of a stock by only looking at the ticker from one day to the next. You don't need to look anything about, you're not looking anything about the business. You're not looking at their financials and you're not looking at the trends, right? You're just looking from one day to the next. That's not going to tell you anything. You're going to lose all your money trying to chase that. Let me give you a metaphor. We'll use another hiking one, actually. Weight loss is sort of like a long trail in the woods. You're going to go up hills, you're going to go down hills, but the goal is to move down from the top to the bottom of a mountain, we'll say. Now, on the way down, you actually might go up a little bit, right? Because it's not always a straight line down. Sometimes there's a little incline before it goes down again. This is sort of what the scale's like, right? A 3 pound gain in a week might just be the metaphorical equivalent of a little terrain coming up before a major descent. don't let this little hill going up make you go, oh no, I'm going the wrong direction. It's like, no, you're moving your way towards down. Just you have to go up and over this rock before you can get down to the other side. That's the important thing. We were just talking about this actually in a group call that I was doing, where I asked the group, I'm like, hey, who here, raise your hand, has noticed that the scale tends to go up by 2 or 3 pounds before you see weight loss? Like 70% of the room raised their hand. Me included. I'm currently right now in a deficit. I went up 4 pounds last week. Actually, here, let me pull up my scale data. Let me read to you my scale data for this weight. I've been in a deficit, for 4 weeks now? I'm trying to do it. So let me read this from the last. So 174.6, 176, 177. Now, let me tell you the days. This is from between, this is within a week. Within a week, I went from 174 to 176, and I changed nothing. I just kept going. You know how much I weighed this morning? 174. This is right back where I was. It's coming right back down. This is so normal. Let me tell you about the previous dip I had. So before my previous dip, I was 175. Then it went to 176. Then it went to 176.6. Then it dropped to 175.2. Then it dropped to 174.6. It went up, then down. You can't really see my scale data because it's a podcast, but my data goes up and down, up and down, up and down, but it's zigzagging its way down. Because of my job, I've been exposed to a lot of individuals' scale data trended over time. I can tell you, unless the person just is choosing to not record the spikes up and they're only recording the lowest, the new personal best, unless they're doing that, they always zigzag their way down. It always goes up and down, up and down, up and down. That's why you've got to look at the trend over 2 or 3 weeks. So because you're letting the scale discourage you, it's telling me you're focusing on too short of a window of time. You need to widen your time horizon. You need to stop thinking in terms of days and start thinking in terms of weeks and months, right? Not days in a week, but weeks and months. You see, most people on this journey burn out because they're trying to sprint a marathon. And this sounds like what you're trying to do. You're trying to sprint a marathon, you're getting burned out, and then you're seeing the scale go up because you probably ate a little bit more, so your glycogen got a little more topped off, which created a little bump in the scale that wasn't body fat. You're getting discouraged, and so you're doubling down, and you're not getting right back on it. You do not need to be taking breaks from weight loss. You need a version of weight loss that you don't need to escape from every week. You need something that you can just keep doing. You need to find a way to make your journey a lot easier to stick to. So weight loss happens in trends, not in timestamps. Great question. Great question. We'll be back here in just a moment, and I want to talk about something pretty personal from my life. I'm going to talk about something I've never talked about anywhere publicly regarding my spiritual journey and weight loss. So if you're not at all interested in spirituality, you might want to bounce now. But if you're sort of interested in it, come on back after the break. This is the Becoming Thin podcast. Welcome back to the Becoming Thin podcast. I dabbled in something on a live stream, which, oh, by the way, if you don't know this, I go live on YouTube every Monday morning at 9-ish a.m. Central Standard Time. So if you want to catch those, subscribe to Becoming Thin on YouTube, and you'll get notified every time it goes live. But I was talking about some aspects of my spiritual journey, and I got a lot of messages after from people saying, hey, that was interesting stuff. I'd like to know more about that. And it was an abnormal number of messages. Like, I get messages all the time. People are like, hey, that resonated with me. I like that. That was helpful. But like, if within the next day of posting something, I get several on the same topic, that stands out to me. And so I've been sitting with it, and I've talked with several people, and I was like, we're going to dive into this. It's an area I'm afraid to talk about for a number of reasons. But I thought, well, I don't know. This was really important to why I was successful losing my weight. And I think knowing this is going to be helpful for all of you too, if you're on a journey like mine. I was raised very, very Mormon. I full on drank the Kool-Aid. I was all in. I served a mission for the church for 2 years. I believed it through and through. As far as I was concerned, it was as true as gravity. Not a doubt in my mind. And it was and if you don't know much about the Mormon church, it's what I refer to as a lifestyle religion. It dictates how you live your life. Now, my understanding is the Mormon church has changed since I was raised in it. But when I was, it very much was like in controlling your thoughts. Like there were sins of thought, like thinking certain things were a sin. Could you imagine being held accountable for uncontrollable thoughts? Like that's what it would happen. And so it was a very restrictive religion for me, but I believed it wholeheartedly, and I lived by the principles of it. Well, I started to have a deconstruction begin in my 20s, my mid-20s, but I didn't want it. It started to become a deconstruction that I couldn't stop. Like somebody would say something to me, or I would stumble across something in a book, or I would have a question that had no answer, or I would receive an answer that like really didn't make sense to me. And I'd be like, I don't get that. I don't know how to reconcile this with everything else I believe. And so I would take that thing and in my mind, put it on a metaphorical bookshelf and just set it there. And then another time, I'd hear something else. I'm like, wow, I don't know how to explain this. And I'd set it on the bookshelf. And then something else would happen, and I'd set it on the bookshelf. And over many, 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 many years, that bookshelf just kept getting loaded up with stuff. Until one day, I put something on the bookshelf, and it just went, and the whole thing came crashing down to this big, gigantic mess. The bookshelf is falling apart, and I'm looking at this mountain of unexplainable evidence. And I was still trying to explain every single bit of it away. I would go to apologetic websites to have help me understand this, help me justify this in my mind. But I was starting to really struggle with it. And I remember deciding to take a step back and be like, you know what? I'm done going down this path. And here's what made me decide to back off the path. It was a thought experiment that someone presented to me. And it was, if I had an envelope and I set it here in front of you and I said, in this envelope is the truth. It is either the church you believe is true and accurate, or it's false. It's a farce. The answer is in this envelope. Would you open it? Would you know the truth? Knowing that one of the potential answers is everything you believe about the world is not true. And as soon as I heard that question, my answer was, nope, ain't opening that letter. I don't want to know that. Because if I know that, that's going to ruin my entire life. That's going to ruin my whole world. I might lose my friends and family because at the time, the Mormon church actively encouraged shunning people that turned away. And so I was like, no, I don't want to know. And so I stopped looking, but I had this metaphorical pile of crap behind me that I didn't know how to explain. And then one day, I kept coming back to this question. Would I look? And then eventually it boiled down to this thought of like, am I more interested in being right? Or am I more interested in knowing the truth? What am I more interested in? And as I sat with that and pondered with that for many, 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 many weeks, I finally decided I want to know the truth. But not just here, I want to know the truth always. And so I made a decision. I said, I'm going to set off on a quest to find the truth. I don't know where it's going to take me. If this quest on truth tells me that my entire religion is not real, then so be it. If it tells me that it's real, so be it. Whatever it tells me, I'm going to jump in wholeheartedly with both feet. And I'm going to go all in. And if I hear more evidence or something shows me that what I believe is false, I will pivot. And so I did. And making a very long, difficult, emotionally complicated story short, in one night, there were several nights I would lay up at night reading on the internet, but one night I asked 2 questions of myself, and I said, let's go see if I can find the answers to these 2 questions, and I went on the internet. And it was really easy to find the answers. I had never asked the questions before. I'm not going to tell you what they are because that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is I had two questions I had never before asked. And the answers were easy to find because the internet existed. And in one night, my entire religion completely dissolved in my mind. I woke up that day still believing in the Mormon church, and I woke up the next morning completely and totally disbelieving all of it. It was incredibly painful. It was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life to have that happen. I could not put the genie back in the bottle. I couldn't go back to believing Santa Claus was real. I could not unlearn what I had learned. And trust me, I then spent the next month or two trying to discredit what I learned, tried to prove it wrong, and I couldn't. And I began to realize that everything I had been told about morality, about what's right, about what's wrong, about the meaning of life, about where I came from, about where I'm going, about what I'm doing, about how I should conduct myself, everything was a lie. It was all a lie. And it hurt. I felt alone. I felt isolated. I felt frustrated. I ended up finding a support group of other people that had left the Mormon church who felt equally betrayed and isolated and alone. It was where and this path ended up landing me towards atheism, actually. You see, when you lose a religion like that of your youth, it's not unusual for it to create a chain of dominoes, so to speak, a ripple effect that causes you to question everything. Because I realized everything I knew about religion was told to me by another human, and including God. I mean, sure, I had my own experiences, spiritual, I guess you could call them experiences, but I interpreted those experiences through the Mormon paradigm by other Mormons telling me what they mean. And now the Mormon paradigm was gone. Sure, I had these experiences, but I didn't know how to explain them anymore. They became unexplainable. And I ended up being atheist, and then for a while. And then I ended up drifting into being an agnostic. And people would ask me, like, hey, what do you believe? I've lived in the South. It's, religion comes up a lot. And I would say, I'm on a spiritual journey. I don't really know where I'm going. I haven't stopped here. I would say, if they caught me as an atheist, I'd be like, I think I'm an atheist, but I'm not really stuck on it. Like, I'm just on a quest for truth. I'm on a spiritual journey. I don't know where it goes. And then that led to being agnostic, because I said I had these weird experiences I didn't know how to explain, and atheism did not provide me the answers. By the way, I found atheism is just as much a religion as Christianity. I've lived both paradigms. They are identical. They're completely different paradigms with completely different belief structures and logic and everything. They're polar opposite, but they're like both just vehemently and fiercely believing a belief system and a construct. And so I was just like, this feels like just another religion. It's the religion of man instead of the religion of God. And so I was like, no. So I moved from it to agnostic. Now, I know this is a religious conversation. I promise this is going to make sense. I warned you in the beginning. If this isn't interesting to you, I will totally understand if you pause and don't listen from here. That's why I put this at the end of the episode. That way you can still get everything before. So no, I'm not going to be offended if you don't want to hear any of this. But to those of you that do, I want to keep going. And so on this quest for truth, I started to discover that I am easily brainwashed. I am easily conditioned, and it can be done to me against my will. And I can end up believing an entire system of ideas that are flawed, not real, not based in truth. And this quest for truth kept liberating me. And as time progressed, I became obsessed with the pursuit of truth, not of being right, but of truth. At first, I really tried to stay in the realm of science, but I quickly began to realize science has not ventured into every realm of existence. For example, consciousness is something that we as a human society have barely studied. If you compare how much study we've put into consciousness versus, let's say, string theory or astrophysics, you'll see it's not equitable. It's only a recent thing. It would seem to be left previously to the philosophers and the theologians of the world. And I was still seeking to answer those questions as a human. How do I make sense of things? the things that science can't explain, but I'm not willing to buy into a religion at this point. And so truth to me became liberating. And so I kept pursuing it. And I continued to pursue it. And then this pursuit of truth ventured from beyond my own internal spiritual path to my professional path, to my health, to my wellness, to my relationships. This pursuit of truth began to permeate into every aspect of my existence. I began to realize that I was regularly buying into illusions and telling myself that they're real, that they're true. And then as these illusions would shatter, and I would be left with that empty feeling of not having a clue what's right and wrong, what's up and down. At first, that was very disorienting and very unnerving, but eventually I began to crave that feeling. I called it getting my mind blown. I started to really seek and crave being wrong, because when I was wrong, that meant I just discovered truth. Being wrong, I began to see, was not bad. Being wrong is good. Because when I'm wrong and I'm proven wrong, I'm being proven wrong with the truth. So I would defend my position, secretly hoping that I would be proven wrong, that my truth would be just destroyed and replaced with the real truth, because all that was destroyed was an illusion of truth. And so I started looking at my own illusions in every aspect of my life. And after my dad got cancer and died, I started looking at my illusions around time. And then I started to look at my illusions around my life, around how I've been taking care of myself or not taking care of myself, and my illusions around food, around my weight, around my identity, about who I really am. It was at the beginning of my journey, I essentially was saying, I think it's possible I believe illusions with weight loss. Maybe I believe an illusion that carbs are the problem. Maybe it's a fantasy that I have bad genetics. Maybe this is just like my religion. Maybe I have fully bought into the religion of obesity and all the logic that comes with it of it's not your fault, it's a disease, this is happening to you, you're powerless. You're different because you're big. The skinny people don't know. They're the outsiders. They think they understand, but they don't get it. It's funny, when I was a religious person, I used to talk about people outside the religion, like they only look happy. They're not really happy. If they knew what we knew, they'd understand, but they don't know it. We have to go tell them. When I was bigger, I would proselytize the theology of fatness, trying to impose it onto everybody, including all of the weaknesses, the things that hold us back. And I got to thinking, what if I'm wrong? What if I've been wrong the whole time? Because everything I've learned about food, about my body, about wellness, I either just made it up, but I made it up based off of information people just told me. Like people would just tell me, you have to eat healthy to lose weight. The same way that people would tell me that the Mormon church was real. Wait a minute. I discovered that was wrong. Couldn't these people be wrong? They were. They were very wrong. You don't need to eat healthy to lose weight. You need to eat healthy to be healthy. You don't become healthy because you become thin. You become healthy because you became healthy. You become thin by becoming thin. These are two different things. It was the choice to pursue truth that led to me becoming thin. Because it was never just about the body. It was about learning truth and aligning myself with it. The fact is this. Truth is the greatest diet I've ever been on. Because as I chased it, constantly questioning everything I know, constantly seeking to have my mind blown, constantly be seeking to have myself shown how I'm wrong, the thinner I became. And the thinner I became, the more illusions I had to leave behind. Many of you feel the same thing on your own journey. You feel like you're having to, you see the illusions you used to believe. You see these fallacies, these fantasies of reality for what they are. Falsities, not truth. Look, if you want to go on a path to truth, I encourage you to do so. But just know it's going to take time and it will be painful. Because having your truth destroyed is a painful experience. It's not a bad experience. I love it. I'm comfortable in the pain, just as I got comfortable with the pain of running. There's a lot of pain we can become comfortable in. And I had to become comfortable with that. I had to become comfortable with having my mind blown. Thanks for being here. Thanks for coming back to the podcast every week and listening, recharging, rejuvenating yourself, chasing your dreams, the body and life of your dreams. You deserve it. You deserve to live a life that brings you joy, a life that makes you happy, a life that brings you peace. You deserve that. Now, don't make the mistake of thinking that losing weight is going to bring you that. It will not. The journey might. But the weight loss itself isn't what's going to give it to you. Just like the weight loss comes from the journey as well. I had to sacrifice a lot of who I was to become who I am. I've had to do that many times over my life. It's been painful. It's been hard. But it's been necessary and it's been worth it. And I want to encourage you to go on the same journey. I'll see you next week on the Becoming Thin podcast.